Milkweed, Chapter 33. When the bombing stopped, we returned home to Uncle Shepsel shouting in the courtyard, "It's the Russians! We're saved!" He danced into the streets. "We're saved!" Uncle Shepsel was not the only one dancing. Upstairs, we found other people in our room, with people being trucked into the ghetto every day. This was happening everywhere. Now it was happening to us. Janina snapped, "You're in our house!" Everyone stared, but no one said anything. Mr. Milgram pushed his pill cabinet and the table to one side of the room, and to the people he said, "You can have the mattress." Side note, can you think of a reason why he does not want to sleep on that mattress? I went to find the boys, and Enos was standing on top of the butcher shop rubble, and he was laughing. And the others were staring up at him. "What's funny?" I asked. "What's funny? Everything. They herd us in here like animals. They build a wall around us. They starve us. Or they freeze us. They beat us. They shoot us. And they hang us. They set us on fire even. And then, guess what?" He reached down to Big Heinrich and rapped him on the head. "Guess what, Big Heinrich?" "What?" Big Heinrich said. "I'll tell you what." Eno started laughing again. "The Russians come along and say, 'Oh, that's not enough. You Nazis are too easy on them, so we're going to bomb them.' And that's what they do." He threw out his arms. "They bomb us." He looked at us all. "You guys don't think this is the funniest thing that you ever heard of?" Nobody laughed, not even Kuba. Funny or not, the bombs, the Russian bombs, kept falling, and the winter was cold, and the people were hungry. And orphans by the thousands roamed the streets in their rags, in their boils, slumped in doorways begging for food, clothing, anything. There was nothing to give them. So they starved and they froze, and they died in the snow, with their arms frozen outward, still begging even in death. The children who lived were all scraps and eyes. This was the ghetto where children grew down instead of up. I couldn't believe there had been a time when the boys and I had actually wrestled in piles of food. One day, Janina and I heard a commotion in the courtyard, and we looked down from the window. A jackboot and his girlfriend was standing in the entrance. The jackboot man had a bag, and he was pulling pieces of bread from the bag and tossing them into the snow. And every time he tossed a piece, 10 people pounced on it. And the soldier and his girlfriend laughed. They called other couples and soldiers over to come and watch and laugh with them. I saw one girlfriend who did not laugh. Side note, I think Jerry Spinelli stuck this in here to show us that not all of the German people were bad, and not all of them agreed with what they were doing to the Jews. If only lice were food. Every morning we awoke with eyelashes gunked with lice. They made a pop sound and they squirted red when we squeezed them between thumb and fingernail. And every day, the man with the silver pipe marched up and down the street. "Come to the Candy Mountain!" Once I saw a boy stagger after him, but the piper was going too fast. With the new people that were now living in our room, Janina and I could no longer leave our smuggled food on the table. When we returned each night, we slipped food into the coat pockets of Mr. Milgram and Uncle Shepsel as they slept. There were 7 new people living in our room. 5 adults, 2 were twin little boys. The adults never spoke to Uncle Shepsel or Mr. Milgram, but the twin boys came to Janina and me when we were playing pickup sticks. They tried to play, but they were too little to do it right. They made Janina laugh. She began to leave a piece of potato or a piece of onion under their noses at night. There was even less food now since the bombing by the Russians. It had gone on for many days, and most of the bombs had fallen on the other side of the wall, on heaven. The clang of the trolleys was gone now. The colors were gone, except for the glowing blue light of the Blue Camel Hotel. We smuggled food every single night. On the way over, Janina strayed far behind from me. Sometimes I turned quickly to catch sight of her, but they were only shadows. This was her game. Then we had an unexpected holiday. As I was nearing the hole in the wall where I go through to heaven one night, I heard a sound. I looked up, and then I saw something hit the ground. I picked it up. It was a cabbage. A firm, fine cabbage. Suddenly more things were falling at my feet, coming over the wall. Sausages, potatoes, and by now Janina was with me, scooping them up. "Hey, somebody's throwing food over the wall," I said to her, and we stood there looking up. But nothing else came down, and we ran home with the food, and we giggled all the way. The next night we were ready as the food came flying over the wall again. This happened night after night. Tins of sardines and herring, fruit and babkas. More than anything, we loved seeing the astonished faces of Mr. Milgram and Uncle Shepsel when we returned with our nightly feast. And then, just as suddenly, the flying food stopped. We were back on our own. Side note here, think about who do you think may have been throwing that food over the wall? We always met up on the other side of the wall. If she didn't find me searching for food, she would be waiting for me at the 2-brick hole. We always came back through the wall together. Me first, and then her. It was this way ever since we found Oleg. Until the night, I couldn't fit through the hole anymore. Side note, these are probably 2 of the only children in Warsaw that are not starving. Also, Misha is growing. First, I took off my coat and stuffed it through the hole. I still couldn't get through, and I panicked. I tore off my pants, and I jammed myself into the hole and didn't stop until I was through, and I reached back for my pants and redressed myself. But Janina was already laughing so hard her cabbages were rolling across the ground. The next day, at the barber shop, I found a good bone, a big one, among the charred bricks, and I handed it to Big Heinrich, and I said, "Beat me, Big Heinrich!" Big Heinrich was confused. I knew he wouldn't understand. "I'm getting too big," I said to Enos. I lay on the ground on my back, and I raised the bottoms of my feet to Big Heinrich. "Beat my feet," I told him. "I need to stop growing, Heinrich." Enos laughed. "Ha! Beat 'em," he said. "If you don't, I will." Big Heinrich's first wallop sent me skidding over the frozen ground like a sled on ice. Everyone laughed. Enos pushed against my shoulders to keep me from sliding, and he told Big Heinrich to beat away. Big Heinrich was beating away on the soles of my feet when I heard the moo. We all heard it. I couldn't believe it. All along, I had been on the lookout for the cow because I so wanted to please Dr. Korchak. And now, here it was. It was plain to hear as a flop's whistle, but it didn't sound right. The cow was nearby, and we ran to the street, into a courtyard, and there it was. The cow was real. It was galloping across a balcony, a flaming, fiery cow screaming, while a jackboot behind it laughed, and the flamethrower retched more fire until that cow plunged through the railing and sailed through the air, flames flapping like wings to the ground. One person ran across the courtyard to the burning cow, and then it was mobbed. Chapter 34. This year, you will celebrate with us. said Mr. Milgram. He meant the holiday called Hanukkah. It was the first Jewish word I had learned. He had wanted to include me the year before, but Mrs. Milgram would not allow it. "No," she had said, groaning from her mattress. "He is not a Jew, and I am not his mother." She is not herself," Mr. Milgram had said. Still, I wasn't allowed to participate. For 8 nights I sat in a corner and I watched. Now it was Hanukkah time again, and Mrs. Milgram was gone, and Uncle Shepsel had walked outside, because he was a Christian now, being a Lutheran and all. On the first day, Mr. Milgram told me the story of Hanukkah. How long ago the Greeks tried to destroy everything Jewish. See, this is not the first time. How the Jews were outnumbered and had no choice against the Greeks, but beat them anyway. How the Jews celebrated by lighting an oil lamp, but the celebration would have to be short because there was only enough oil to last for 1 day. And then a miracle happened. The oil lasted for 8 days. And so, Hanukkah is 8 days when we remember that time, and we remember to be happy, and we remember to be proud to be Jews. And that we will always survive. This is our time, Misha. We celebrate ourselves. We must be happy now. We must never forget how to be happy. We must never forget. Happy? I had not heard that word since Mr. Milgram spoke it at last Hanukkah. I asked him the question that had been on my mind since then. "Tata, what is happy?" He looked at me and at the ceiling and then back to me. "Did you ever taste an orange?" "No, but I heard of them. Are they real?" "Oh, never mind." He stared at me small. "Did you ever..." He stopped and shook his head. "No." After more staring, he said, "Were you ever cold and then you became warm?" I thought of sleeping with the boys under the braided rug, and cold and then warm. "Yeah," I blurted out. "Is that happy?" He smiled. That was happy. I felt again the cuddled tent of warmth. Sometimes I would stick my nose out to better feel the warmth on the rest of me. "Under the rug." "No," Mr. Milgram said. "Happy is here." He tapped his own chest. "Here." I looked down past my chin. "Inside me?" "Inside." It was getting crowded in there. First an angel, now happy. It seemed that there was so much more to me than cabbages and turnips. I looked at Janina sitting potato-faced on the floor. She hadn't smiled since the burning cow. "Tata, Janina does not have happy." He squeezed my shoulder and he smiled sadly. "No." Mr. Milgram took the silver candle holder from the pill cabinet and lit the first of 8 candles. The twins came over to stare at the flame, and the other new people stayed on their side of the room. Gunshots echoed in the streets as Mr. Milgram said words over the candle flame. The flames gave a faint yellow tint to his frozen breath, and then he sang a song. "Sing, Janina," he said to her. But Janina only gave a grunt or two. And then he pulled Janina and me to our feet, and the twins also, and he made us all hold hands, and we danced in a circle while Mr. Milgram sang, and the candle flame quivered, and somebody screamed in the night. The smile never left Mr. Milgram's face. I copied his smile as best I could. Janina's shoulders slumped, and her shoes dragged across the floor. I wondered, were the orphans with Dr. Korchak, were they dancing in a circle? And then Mr. Milgram took something and another something from his coat pocket. They were wrapped in newspaper. He gave one to Janina and one to me. I tore mine open. It was a comb. I couldn't believe it. I remembered the canister full of combs in the barber shop, and I remembered Yuri combing my hair. Now I had my very own. I threw off my cap and I sank that comb like a spade into my hair. It stuck. I pulled. I couldn't believe it. I dropped the comb and I began tearing apart the thatch of hair with my fingers. I tried the comb again, and using all my strength, I was finally able to pull the comb through my hair. I could feel the lice and their eggs peppering the back of my neck. I heard them ticking on the floor. In the light of the candle, I combed and combed and combed my hair. Not until the next day did I notice that Janina's gift was still wrapped in newspaper. "You're not going to open it?" I said. She pouted. "No." So I opened it. It was a comb just like mine. I gave it to her. She threw it on the floor and I picked it up and I began combing her curly brown hair. "See?" I said. "Doesn't that feel good? And it's better than picking out lice with our fingers, Janina." She didn't answer. She didn't smile. She just sat there. But she didn't stop me from combing. On the second day of Hanukkah, when Mr. Milgram went for the silver candle holder, it was gone. Mr. Milgram seemed surprised, but I wasn't. In my world, things existed to be stolen. And with the other family in the room, everybody knew who did it and why they did it. And if you knew who to deal with, things could be traded for money, and money could be traded for food. Their new neighbors that are living in their room did it. Mr. Milgram accused nobody. He simply looked out the window and said loud enough for all in the room to hear, "What a shame when Jew will steal from Jew." He found a candle stub and lit the tiny wick with a match, and he looked at Janina and me. Which one of you will be the menorah?" The menorah was the candle holder. "I will," I said. He gave me the candle. He made for it a collar of newspaper so the hot wax would not drip on my hand. I stood at attention, and I held my arms out, and I did my best to imitate a menorah. Mr. Milgram said the words and sang, and I asked him if I could sing the song I learned at Dr. Korchak's orphanage. His eyes glistened in the light from my candle. "Yes, yes." So I sang my song. I was a singing candle holder. And Mr. Milgram and the twins danced in a circle and laughed, but Janina sat on the floor and refused to get up. So the days of Hanukkah went. When the candles burned away, Mr. Milgram stuck a match and said that maybe it would last for 8 days, like the oil in the story. But it burned away before he even had finished speaking. "So," he said, "we ourselves will be the candle flames." He put his hands on his chest. "Feel your hearts, how warm they are." And I did, and I could feel my heart getting warm. I could feel the flame in my chest as we danced in a circle. And each night I went out for food. Janina now stayed behind. She never left the room anymore. She never spoke anymore. She even stopped complaining. I combed her hair for hours each day, but I could not comb a smile onto her face. And I was also beginning to lose my happy. Janina's sadness is getting to Misha. Janina, by the way, is in the process of giving up, and Misha's job is to try to break her out of this phase of giving in. Then an idea came to me. Although Janina did not like her comb, I knew of something she would like very much. Almost every time she ate, I heard her mutter, "Oh, I wish I had a pickled egg." I knew about pickled herring, but I didn't know about pickled eggs, and I thought, I'll find an egg and a pickle. There was only one day of Hanukkah left, and that night when I went to the other side, I forgot about everything else. I could not remember seeing an egg in my smuggling searches. But then, I hadn't been looking for eggs. I knew eggs were kept in cool places, so I looked in ice boxes and basements. I went to all my best houses, plus the Blue Camel Hotel, and I did not find a single egg. As for pickles, I was hoping for the fat, juicy kind that Yuri used to eat, but the best I could do was a jar of pickle spears in someone's pantry. I was traveling light this night, so I just took a couple of the pickle spears from the jar and I put them in my pocket. Now all I needed was an egg. It had begun to snow, and I lurked down alleyways, jiggling strange doors and windows, trying to get in anywhere, somewhere. There were more ruins now after the Russians' bombing. Parts of heaven were beginning to look like the ghetto. At last I found an egg, not in a great house, but in a shoemaker's shop. A shoemaker is a cobbler. And not in an icebox, but sitting on a scrap of leather on a workbench. I cradled the egg in my hand because I knew how fragile they were, and I could already hear Janina's joyful squeal in my head. And on the way back out on the street, I heard a whistle blast. I thought nothing of it. The jackboots were after somebody. The whistle kept getting louder, and then a shouting voice. Yuda! Yuda! I didn't understand. Nobody ever stopped me over here, and I ran. A second voice was shouting, Yuda! Snowflakes pelted my face. I kept my fingers loose about the egg. I could not run in a straight line, for there were craters in the streets from the bombing, and I could not lead them to the hole in the wall. I darted into an alley and into the shadows and deep into a heap of rubble, and I hid. I crouched, panting and pressing the cold, smooth egg to my lips. The shouts and the whistles grew faint. I waited for a long time. The snow piled on my hat and my collar. I could smell the pickle in my pocket. I warmed the egg with my breath. The sky was turning from black to gray when I made my way back to the 2-brick hole. I reached to the other side and laid the egg in the snow, and I wriggled after it. I had been having no problems getting through the hole lately. Big Heinrich's walloping must have worked. Side note, food is beginning to run out. Even Misha is getting skinny. The moment I returned to the ghetto side, I realized now why the jackboots had been after me. I had forgotten to take off my armband, the one with the star. I had been announcing to all of Warsaw, look, I'm a Jew. Escaped from the ghetto. It was a wonder they hadn't noticed me sooner. It was a wonder I was still alive. Darkness, which was my friend, was now leaving. I had to hurry, and I ran, and I was dashing around a corner when I tripped over a body that was half hidden in the snow, and I went sprawling on the sidewalk. The egg flew from my hand. At first, I was happy for the pillow of snow, but when I picked up the egg, I saw in the dim light that the shell was cracked. I was heartbroken. All the dangers it had survived only to come to this. And then I noticed it was only cracked. It wasn't broken. There was no yellow seeping into the snow. I didn't understand. An egg that cracked but didn't break? It was a miracle. I ran the rest of the way, veering around bodies. Mr. Milgram was already awake when I got home, and Janina was sleeping, and I showed him the egg and the pickle spears. For Janina, I whispered. Happy! He looked at the egg, and he looked at the pickle spears, but he looked longer at me. Look at the egg, Tata, I said. It doesn't break. Is it a miracle? He studied the egg, and he held it to his ear and shook it. He nodded. No, he whispered. The miracle is you, Misha. The egg is hard-boiled. It won't break. A hard-boiled egg? Well, this was something new to me. I hoped Janina would like it. And that night I gave it to her. Her eyes bulged like birds' eggs. She peeled off the shell and shoved the whole egg into her mouth. She closed her eyes and made little sounds as she ate it. Wait, I said. Pickle! He held them out. Pickled egg! She waved the pickle away. Pickled eggs are purple, Misha, she mumbled through the mush in her mouth. The twins were staring. Their teeth were going up and down with hers as she ate. And when she finished eating the egg, she hugged her father and said, "Oh, thank you." "No, thank Misha," he said. "It was his idea. He found it on the other side." She hugged me. I was surprised that she could squeeze me that hard. Uncle Shepsel returned, and he came to the room only to eat and sleep now. He stayed away from us. He really believes that becoming a Lutheran is going to get him out of the ghetto. He believed that the less time he spent around Jews, the more Lutheran he became. But even Lutherans get hungry, and when he came in the door, he sniffed the air and said, "Pickles!" To my surprise, Mr. Milgram took a pickle spear from his pocket and gave it to Uncle Shepsel. As for me, I had been awake way too long. I lay down, and I felt a comb in my hair, combing and combing my hair. And that's the end of chapter 34, and it sounds like Misha has brought Janina out of her funk.